Over the last decade, the fashion world has witnessed an ethical revolution as consumers demand better working conditions and pay for garment workers, an end to child labour, and eco-conscious production methods that protect the planet. The fur trade is just one part of this industry, and it's a huge source of unseen suffering and exploitation for animals unlucky enough to be caught or raised in captivity, eventually meeting painful, inhumane deaths simply to end up as a trim on a jacket or as a fashion accessory. But fur is rapidly being recognised as outdated, outmoded by the fashion world, with designers from Armani, Gucci, Jimmy Choo to Prada, Chanel, Burberry and Versace dropping fur from their collections, mainly due to consumer demand. As the former CEO of the British Fur Trade Association, Mike Moser defended the fur trade for 10 years, but he is now speaking out against the inhumane conditions that the animals have to endure and supporting Humane Society International's Fur Free Britain campaign for a UK fur sales ban. He joins me now. Mike, you've been the face of the British fur trade for years, and I think we'd like to know, when did you feel enough was enough? And what was the light bulb moment that made you rethink everything?
Well, I think a bit like a marriage that's going wrong, it can't continue. And that's really the position I came to. It was an increasing realisation that the welfare regulations were not enough to guarantee a good life for the animals, that the footage that kept coming up, the horrendous footage, was a symptom of the farming itself, that I didn't believe it was ever going to be completely eradicated. I didn't think it was possible to completely stop the practices. And I just felt, look, I can no longer, with a hand on my heart and with good faith, defend the industry. I've visited fur farms on 5 continents, so I've seen for myself the conditions of the animals. And yet there are regulations which are apparently in place to assure that the animals lead good lives. But for me, the reality was very different. These animals are caged for their entire lives, and that can't be right. It isn't right. I'd go home and I'd look at my loving dog, my pet Barney, and I'd look at him and I'd just think, but you've just come from a farm where some animals, and the foxes, aren't a great deal smaller than he is. And yet they're spending their entire lives caged. And I just thought, it's wrong. Over a number of occasions, I found myself in a debate with Claire from the Humane Society. And as I would do, I tried to understand her messages so that I could counter these. But what I found increasingly was that I agreed more with her messages than I did my own. It's really important to realise that animals have feelings. All animals have feelings, not just those that are in our sphere, not just those that we love. All animals do. And one of the cores of animal welfare is the ability to be able to exhibit natural behaviour. Foxes dig, they hunt. Mink swim, they hunt. In cages, they can't do this. And to me, that discrepancy was simply not tolerable. You cannot say that an animal is okay to be caged because it's been domesticated over years of breeding. Being caged, they simply cannot exhibit those natural behaviour, and therefore it's cruel. I guess, one of my main regrets is that I didn't leave earlier, that I didn't listen to the doubts. The things which I did, which I was very proud of, in terms of trying to achieve changes, but those changes were never going to be broad enough nor deep enough to guarantee the good life for the animals that are being caged. And so, yes, that is a regret, that there are animals today who are still living their lives, their entire lives, and that hasn't changed, and it can't change whilst the fur trade survives.
So, Mike, we're now going to watch some footage from 9 different fur farms in Finland. So watching that, Mike, how does it make you feel about the lives those animals are living and what we're seeing there?
How can anybody not be devastated by the fear and the pain that those animals are obviously suffering? Under any circumstances, it is wholly unacceptable that they're in that situation purely for fur, for a product that is only used for vanity, that has no other use. That it's still going on in a society where social attitudes have changed dramatically, where the zeitgeist of the people find this wholly unacceptable. I cannot understand how anybody could operate a business, a farm, where these things are going on and still sleep at night. I'm genuinely lost for words. It's got to stop. Nobody can justify that first produced. It's happening on farms. Obviously cannot be stopped, otherwise it would have been stopped. And if you cannot stop this on one farm, you've got to stop it on all farms.
The issue with that footage is that the fur industry talks a lot about welfare certification schemes. And that footage was captured in Finland, which is a country that prides itself on having almost blanket certification on all its farms. And these are schemes that typically promise high standards of animal welfare. So why is it, despite industry claims of delivering good welfare certification, why are we still seeing so many scenes like that?
Farms in countries such as Finland and elsewhere in Europe are obliged to operate under welfare regulations, which should, in principle, deliver good welfare. It is apparent that that is not the case. Otherwise, we would not repeatedly see these scenes. These animals, it would seem to me, are suffering because they're caged. The fear in those animals, the fear in the cubs, it's unacceptable. And that fear is going to be seen on farms. Those foxes are having to walk on grids. Their poor feet are falling through them. They have to be on grids. Why? So that the faeces can fall through to the floor. How on earth can you have good welfare, whatever the certification is, when you have them cages barely bigger than the full-grown animal? I can't see that certification is going to deliver high welfare on all farms. It just won't happen. It can't happen. Certification is not going to stop caging. I think what's important is what the ordinary person, what society today considers to be good welfare. When an animal is caged, and the cages, as I said, are barely larger than the animals, when they can't freely move, when they cannot exhibit their natural behaviour, that is in complete contradiction to any definition of good welfare.
Thank you, Mike. The next clip shows the trapping of coyotes in North America.
He's pissed. That's what he is. You must have hit the right spot. He's not taking near as long today.
The animals we saw there are likely to end up as fur trim on parkas. And many brands using that fur will say that the animal's lived its life in the wild. There's no cages there. Does that make it okay? Is that justified for you?
What we saw, Bill, were animals in pain. We saw animals in fear. Whatever their life was before that moment, those moments are objectionable. That it then, after it's died, its pelt is put on a coat for people to feel good about themselves. I think the simple answer is no, of course it's not justifiable. It is good that the animals have led natural lives, absolutely. But that they should end their lives in such cruel manners, I can't imagine. It upsets me immensely. And so no, just by virtue of the animal living a healthy life, no animal should end its life in that way. And certainly not for a piece of trim on a hood, on a parka.
We're now going to watch footage, this time compiled from 11 different fur farms in Asia, and it's all been shot November, December 2019, so again it's really recent.
I genuinely am lost for words, Bill. Just when I think, man and humanity to animals cannot be any worse, I see things such as this. I don't know, I can't understand how a human being can inflict such pain on an animal, irrespective of the reasons why, irrespective of. I've got no answer as to what is in somebody's mind. But what is of a huge concern to the industry is that this has taken place on a fur farm. In the past, there was footage, and the fur trade said, "Well, that didn't happen on a fur farm. That happened in a live market." Well, there's no alibi this time. This happened on a fur farm. And to me, it shows clearly that whatever regulations are in place, whatever certification schemes are in the offing, they still cannot completely stop this mistreatment of animals. I've no doubt that the vast majority of people working in the fur trade will be as appalled by that footage as we are. They're human beings, and I defy anybody not to be immensely upset and appalled. But there has to be accountability. There's responsibility. And that if these acts are being carried out on fur farms, then the fur trade is accountable. There's no other way of looking at this. And if they cannot completely stop this mistreatment on all fur farms, then the question must ask, well, what is the legitimacy of the fur farming, of the fur industry? There's clear evidence, Bill, that fur farming and good welfare as far as an ordinary person is concerned are incompatible.
How do you think consumers would react if they saw some of the footage that we've seen today?
But that's a very, very good question. And I wonder that if in some of the stores who are selling the Coyote trimmed parkas, if they had rolling footage that we've seen today of these coyotes in their leg hold traps, I wonder what that would do for their sales. If people were held accountable for the products that they're buying. As a responsible society, we want to be more responsible. And I would just pose the rhetorical question, just because we can, does that mean we should? So if consumers want to make a difference to the environment in which they're living and the future environment, we simply have to be more responsible in those choices that we're making. You can make a difference by what you buy, from where you buy it, from what you don't buy. So retailers have a huge responsibility to make a difference. They should know where their products have come from. They are in control of their supply chains. And ultimately, retailers should be held accountable for the products that they're selling. So when people are going to buy these products, I implore them to ask why. Seeing those piles of carcasses of these animals, knowing how they've suffered, should bring home to bear to people just what they're contributing to. It is inconsistent to allow the continuation of fur farming or trapping and maintain good welfare. Then that's an easy decision to make. And I do believe that it is not possible for an animal to lead a long and healthy life, a good life, a happy life in a cage. So policymakers must look, if they want to take responsibility for the society in which we should become, then they must look at policies which are going to guide us in the right direction. And regarding animal welfare, yes, there may be some tough decisions to make in the short term. There may be some economic impact, although I question just how big an impact that will be in the UK. Certainly the number of fur businesses has been declining. So I don't think the economic impact of a sales ban in this country will be particularly profound. There will be a short-term pain for those involved in the industry, but we sometimes need to do things that are painful for the greater good. So for an industry that is anachronistic, that has been very slow to move, that is belatedly trying to change for what it believes to be good, they'll look at my speaking as I am today, and yeah, I don't doubt they'll be probably quite angry. But maybe they should be looking internally and looking at, well, if somebody like myself with 10 years of experience, in which I didn't only work for the BFTA, I also worked for the International Fur Federation where I was the director of something, with somebody with the knowledge and the experience that I've got, who now feels so strongly against the industry, then maybe they should be looking at what's gone wrong. I can't say what the future holds, but the industry's reputation seems to be stuck in the past. And in my view, no amount of what they consider to be modernisation, certification, is going to make much material difference.
So Mike, now the Humane Society International is calling for the UK fur sales ban. Do you support that?
You know, it's morally ambiguous, politically ambiguous, to ban the means of production but still support it by proxy, by allowing its importation and sales. So what I would simply put to the politicians is just think about that. It's been banned in this country. Fur farming, fur production was banned in this country, yet we still support its production by allowing it to be brought in. To me, that's ambiguous. To me, it's no longer acceptable. And so the very simple answer, Belle, is I think we must very quickly accept the way that the people, the zeitgeist, which is it's not acceptable anymore, and we should ban it.
If a former fur trade executive feels compelled to speak out against the animal suffering inherent in the fur trade, then surely we have arrived at another conscious shifting moment for the fashion industry, a moment where we question everything about the items and products that we take for granted. Fur trade insiders are pointing out that if we don't allow production in the UK, then we shouldn't support the fur trade by importing fur. You have the power to end this cruelty by supporting a fur-free Britain. Thank you.